Well, we saw her there in Jason's report, and joining me now from East London, Kiran Gill, founder of The Difference. This is a charity that tries to change the story on school exclusion through leadership. Thanks a lot for joining us. And this research that we've seen, is it borne out by your experience as well, that the situation has got worse as a result of COVID-19?
Thanks for having me, Jane. Yes, The Difference works with pupil referral units across the country, but also mainstream schools and multi-academy trusts. And whilst there isn't new government data, we are hearing that in lots of the local authorities and the MATs that we work in, young people are coming back to school with, as we heard the former Children's Commissioner say, serious things having gone on often outside the classroom at home. And that is translating into real challenges at school, and we worry a rising exclusion rate.
How can teachers tackle this?
Such a good question. And I think it's really important, whilst this is quite a depressing story, that actually we can see lots of teachers and schools, particularly head teachers, trying to tackle this. And one way, for instance, is the Difference Leaders programme. So you saw there Daniel and Kalpana. Those are two of several teachers across the country now who have done the bold move of quitting their mainstream jobs to go and work in a pupil referral unit for 2 years. And they want one day to become head teachers, but they know that through getting the insight of working in pupil referral units, in what happens at the acute end with vulnerable young people, they can take that learning back to mainstream and work upstream to apply it so they can try to prevent exclusion as school leaders in the future. And we're actually on the lookout at The Difference for our next cohort of leaders. So if you're a teacher or you know a teacher and you're watching, then check out www.the-difference.com and you might join them working with those children like Mariam, who was so inspiring and doesn't need to fall out of the system.
The PRUs that you talk about, the pupil referral units, they do have a really important function in the lives of children who've been excluded, don't they? I'm assuming that they were closed as schools were closed during COVID. Were they?
Well, actually, I presented to Parliament about this in the all-party parliamentary group. It's been a really patchy and different experience across the country. In some local authorities, if you were excluded, your school sadly did close for various reasons. But the one we were in that footage, you saw Haringey Learning Partnership stayed open throughout the pandemic and the summer holidays for their vulnerable young people, because obviously young people who were interacting with social services had a social worker because things were not safe for them. Those children were supposed to be coming into school, and lots of pupil referral units kept their doors open and made sure that happened during the pandemic.
What is the long-term impact of a child being excluded from school?
Sadly, and I hope this isn't the case for wonderful young people like Mariam, who do buck the trend, but the national figures are shocking. So you're very unlikely to get the passport qualifications you need, much more likely to be unemployed. And obviously, there's lots of mental health problems that go hand in hand with youth unemployment. And frighteningly, there is a real overlap between young people who are excluded from school and then go on into criminal activity, often through teenage criminal exploitation, which we're learning so much more about and has seemed to be rising during the pandemic. So the long-term outcomes are really, really tragic for those individual children, their families, and of course the communities that they live in, which is why so many teachers are saying that they want to be part of changing that story. And I should also say that The Difference has been lucky to work with some multi-academy trusts and local authority schools and groups who are bucking the trend. And even though exclusions have risen nationally, in those schools that have worked with us at The Difference, we've seen exclusions actually fall in the period before and after the pandemic. And that's really quite exciting.
Kiran, we've got to leave it there. Kiran Gill, thanks very much. Let's get a look at the weather.